This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
March Madness, and we're not talking basketball. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. The cleanup continues from deadly weekend storms that claimed at least 40 lives in multiple states. A dozen deaths were reported in Missouri alone.
I don't know if I was just going to make it or not.
That man captured the moment a twister tore through his front yard. Tornadoes touching down from Texas to Pennsylvania, Friday through Sunday.
It still doesn't feel real. It seems like a bad nightmare.
That woman lives in hard-hit Arkansas, where the National Guard is assisting in storm recovery efforts. NBC's Kathy Park is in Mississippi today.
Hard to believe that the devastation happened in a matter of seconds. 2 back-to-back tornadoes were reported in this area. That's why the damage is so widespread. Today's
show meteorologist Al Roker.
That tornado where Kathy was, it threw debris 30,000 feet into the air. That's as high as airplanes are flying.
In Alabama, a tornado was so strong it picked up a school bus and dropped it onto the roof of a high school. We'll have more on how this severe weather impacted us a little later in the broadcast. President Trump speaks tomorrow with Russia's Vladimir Putin. The two world leaders will discuss ways to wind down the war in Ukraine. Trump envoy Steve Witkoff.
The president uses the time frame weeks, and I don't disagree with him. I am really hopeful that we're going to see some real progress here.
The commander-in-chief is trying to win Putin's support for a 30-day ceasefire that Ukraine agreed to last week. A new NBC News poll shows 3 months into his second term, President Trump is enjoying his highest approval rating ever. It's 47% only. That means 51% of us disapprove of the job Trump's doing. For Democrats, though, it is far worse. The survey shows just 27% of the American people support the job the Democrats are doing right now. The White House is ignoring a judge's ruling on deportations after flying dangerous Venezuelan migrants to a Supermax mega prison in El Salvador.
This legal drama is escalating here in the nation's capital. The attorneys representing these plaintiffs, these people with ties to Venezuela who are challenging the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act for these deportations, have asked Judge James Boasberg here at the federal court to order the Trump administration turn over information about the flight. When did it take off? When did it land? When did the Trump administration know the order was to turn the plane around?
CBS's Scott McFarland, presidential press secretary Caroline Leavitt, claims the White House did not defy any court order by flying those illegals out of the country. Our coverage continues with Jared Halpern at Fox News.
The administration flew hundreds of suspected migrant gang members to El Salvador and Honduras. Leavitt says while the order from a federal district court judge had no lawful basis, it was issued after the migrants were already out of U.S. territory and airspace.
Legal scholar Katie Cherkasky thinks ultimately the president will prevail here.
I think that the administration has a very strong legal argument to get rid of designated gang members. Not really sure who's looking to keep them here and why they're so desperate for that, but certainly I think that in the big picture of this, the administration has a very strong argument.
The 1798 Alien Enemies Act has only been used 3 times before, once in the War of 1812 and then again in World Wars I and II. Elsewhere on the world stage, both sides promising to up the ante after the U.S. military launched airstrikes on Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
This is not a message. This is not a one-off. This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping.
The rebels say they are targeting U.S. military vessels in the Red Sea as an act of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. It's almost time for a pair of astronauts stuck aboard the International Space Station to come home. Rory O'Neill is in South Florida. Florida today.
After a launch on Friday, the replacement crew docked to the space station this weekend.
You cannot be great without the greatness of others. And I tell you, the greatness of the ground control teams have really shined through in the last few days, getting us up here safely.
Commander Ann McClain, 2 astronauts stuck on the station since April, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, will join 2 others who arrived in September for a return trip to Earth aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule. The 4 will undock overnight tonight and splash down off the Florida coast just before 6 p.m. Eastern Time if the weather cooperates. I'm Rory O'Neill.
Millions of spectators are lined up several rows deep along New York's famed Fifth Avenue today. It's the 264th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's not only one of the oldest parades in the country, it's also the largest. 6 long hours, start to finish. 150,000 participants are involved in this year's St. Patrick's Day Parade. The field is set for the 2025 NCAA Men's College Basketball Tournament. Auburn is the overall number 1 seed in the South. Duke is tops in the East. Houston ranks number 1 in the Midwest, and Florida securing the top spot out west. Reporter Sam Brock.
The euphoria for hoops fans starts in just over 24 hours with the tip-off of the first 4 games. This is the time of year, guys, when players from programs big and small become household names across America, when we fall in love with those improbable Cinderella stories, and when only one team is left standing at the end.
Can't wait to go dancing. The SEC set a record this year with 14 teams invited to the tournament. Kansas has also set a record by making the big dance for a 35th straight season. Still to come on the Noon Report, storm cleanup efforts. Christians converge on Albany, and less is more when it comes to this parade. Brian Query will explain after this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Well, the chill is back, at least for a day. I'll have the forecast coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll check in then. Let's check the stories making news. Across New York and Pennsylvania, flags are flying at half-staff today all across New York in honor of late Hudson Valley Congresswoman Nita Lowey. She died over the weekend after a lengthy battle with breast cancer. Lowey was 87. She spent more than 30 years in politics and was the first woman to chair the House Appropriations Committee. Tens of thousands are still powerless in New York and Pennsylvania from yesterday's powerful windstorms. Southport, New York Fire Chief Tim Sweeney says if you come in contact with a downed power line, stay away and stay alert.
Just keep their eyes open for things that don't look right on the street and keep an eye on power lines. Don't drive through power lines. Don't drive through whatever looks like a power line because no one knows.
Cleanup efforts continue after a line of severe storms blew through Sunday afternoon. Amtrak service from Toronto to New York was delayed because of downed utility lines. Debris on the railroad tracks also impacted service between Syracuse and Niagara Falls. There were tornado warnings for the northern tier and central New York. A funnel cloud was spotted near the state fairgrounds in Syracuse. Crews battled a massive fire at a chicken barn last night in Juniata County, PA. It happened near the town of Mifflintown. It's unclear how many chickens were in that barn or what sparked that massive blaze. New York's annual springtime burn ban is now in effect. Family Life's Mark Webster.
Yeah, since 2009, the state DEC has enforced the annual ban on burning brush and debris at a time of year when conditions for such fires getting out of hand tend to rise. In New York and Pennsylvania, open burning is the #1 cause of spring wildfires. Small backyard fire pits and campfires are still allowed using charcoal or small, dry, untreated, unpainted wood. The ban will remain in place until May 14th. Violators can rack up steep fines that start at $500. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. Home health care aides in Rochester, New York have voted to go on strike. Those workers are affiliated with the University of Rochester. That job action will last for at least 5 days. The healthcare aides want better pay, fewer caseloads, and affordable health care. Hundreds of Christian activists will descend on Albany tomorrow to rally for conservative causes. It's called Legislative Day, the premier event of the year for the socially conservative, politically involved involved, faith-based community.
We live in a day and an age here in state politics where really activism is the method of communicating with elected officials. And there are groups that travel there by the busload from all over the state for various issues, for every issue really. And this is that time of year when believers, followers of Jesus Christ, come to the Capitol and let the state legislators know their position on the issues. We are dangerously close to the passage of assisted suicide in this state. We have a continuing transgender issue here in our state. While many states are moving away from that, we're digging in the heels here in New York. There are so many issues that need to be heard, and this is an opportunity with a collective voice to rise up and say, the legislature, listen to our concerns.
Jason McGuire with New York Family says tomorrow's rally is all about being proactive instead of reactive when it comes to the culture war.
You know, you live in a state where so many of these issues are constantly being shoved at you, and so you have to react, you have to respond to those things. But ultimately, if we want to be able to win these issues, you want to be on offense on these things. You know, we're in this for the long game. Let's just say we're in it for the eternal game. Yeah. And so we're not looking at this as a political fight. We're seeing this as matters of morality. And when you build the family, well, then you build the state and the nation.
Tuesday's Legislative Day event will culminate with a worship service and then a time of prayer for New York's elected leaders. A new poll shows a majority of New Yorkers incur debt due to rising food costs. According to the group No Kid Hungry New York, more than half of all the residents are struggling to afford their grocery bills. This past year, there was a 46% increase in the number of New York families seeking assistance from food pantries. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is sounding off on the president's trade war with Mexico, Canada, China, and the EU. Hochul admits the tariffs could pay off in the long run, but she thinks the benefits are not worth the risk.
Our states, our residents, the people you promised to lower the cost of everything on day one, they're the collateral damage in this war. And there may be some long-term gain that the president sees, but why are we making people suffer right now? They've been through enough.
Governor Hochul met last week at the White House with President Trump. The governor's facing backlash over her attempts to bar fired corrections officers from seeking employment with other state agencies. Hochul wants to revoke the CO's peace officer certification, which would effectively ban them from ever serving again in law enforcement. Attorney Michael McComber tells Spectrum News.
It's a little unclear where a lot of this is going to shake out. I think the most realistic petitioner will be the actual COs, the correction officers.
Chemung County's already sued the governor over her executive action, and several other counties are expected to follow suit. Organizers say the time is right to restore an historic Pennsylvania clock tower.
Save the clock tower! Save the clock tower!
This clock tower sits atop the Calvary Penns Valley Church in the town of Millheim in Center County. Borough Council member Robert Ziegler tells WJAC.
The tower's been there since the mid-1880s. The exact year's been debated on. Technically, the borough owns the mechanisms of the clock, but the structure is the church's. So you get a lot of interesting legalese with that project. Ideally, we would get to restore everything to its former glory, keep it as the right location that it is now.
The clock has not operated for decades. A fundraiser was held yesterday to try and kickstart the restoration effort. Pennsylvania State Police are searching for some cow killers. Cops say the suspect shot and killed multiple cows in Lancaster County over the weekend. A horse also killed there in Amish country. There were fewer traffic accidents last year in PA. In fact, the rate of motor vehicle crashes was down almost 15%. Pennsylvania ranks 18th in the country when it comes to incidents of automobile accidents. A Pennsylvania town recently celebrated its short and sweet St. Patrick's Day parade.
Forget long, winding parades filled with endless floats and marching bands. The northeast Pennsylvania town of Nanticoke does things a little differently for St. Patrick's Day. Hosted by Froggy 101, Nanticoke calls its celebration Northeast PA's smallest St. Patrick's Day parade, and it proudly lives up to its name. It stepped off Friday at 9 a.m., and with only a handful of participants, the focus isn't on size, but good humor. The crowd cheered as parade goers and city officials marched around Patriot Park, waving shamrocks and soaking in the festive fun. This year's event managed to shave off even more time than last year, clocking in at just under 6 minutes, proving that sometimes less really is more. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Brian. Ever wonder why we wear green on St. Patrick's Day? Michael Kastner files this report.
There's a lot of lore regarding leprechauns, a mythical creature said to go around pinching people not wearing green. There's also a belief that wearing green on St. Patrick's Day is rooted in the color having become a symbol of Irish identity and resistance against British rule in the 1700s. But times have changed. If you're in New York City and decide pinching is in order, the luck of the Irish might not be with you, since pinching someone without their consent can lead to charges of forcible touching. That's a Class A misdemeanor, potentially resulting in up to 1 year in jail. I'm Michael Kastner.
All right, no more pinching, not even on St. Patrick's Day. Thank you, Michael. Sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the NCAA men's basketball tournament is set, and Auburn is the overall number 1 seed. They will be playing out of the South region. The other number 1 seeds, Duke in the East, Houston in the Midwest, and Florida in the West. The SEC set a new record with 14 teams getting an invite to the big dance. Kansas also set a record. They have made it to the tournament now 35 straight seasons. On to the NBA. Cam Johnson scored 28 points to help Brooklyn snap a 3-game losing streak with a 122-114 win over the Hawks. The Nets outscored Atlanta in the second half 66-52 to come back and win it. 76ers got a rare road victory, knocking off the Mavericks 130-125. Quentin Grimes' 28 points helped put the brakes on a 3-game skid for Philly. Elsewhere, the T-Wolves, Clippers, Lakers, Magic, Trailblazers, and Thunder all won. On the ice at Madison Square Garden, Edmonton took down the Rangers 3-1. Will Cooley had the lone goal for the Blue Shirts. The Islanders doubled up the Panthers 4-2. New York scored all 4 of their goals in the third period to erase a 2-0 deficit. Mark Getka, Maxim Siplikov, Noah Dobson, and Simon Holmstrom all lit the lamp for the Isles. Also skating to wins were the Blues, Avs, Utah, Detroit, and Winnipeg. And in Vegas, Josh Berry won his first ever NASCAR Cup Series race, taking the checkered flag in the Pennzoil 400. Daniel Suarez, Ryan Preece, William Byron, and Ross Chastain rounded out the top 5. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy. Man, still to come on the Noon Report for Monday. Cleaning up from the storm, defending the deportations, and at the end of the broadcast, dental hygiene.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, the president's address to a joint session of Congress was, to say the least, eventful. One of the highlights, to be sure, was when President Donald Trump appointed 13-year-old brain cancer survivor DJ Daniel to be an honorary Secret Service agent. 6 years ago, doctors gave Daniel just 5 months to live. Since then, he's undergone 13 brain surgeries. Throughout the ordeal, Daniel has always dreamed of becoming a police officer. In fact, over 100 different law enforcement agencies have sworn him into their ranks since then. Just recently, a video surfaced on social media where DJ was being bullied and ridiculed for wearing his police uniform. And the reason that so many found how he's treated in the video so abhorrent is because of an idea that's only found in the Bible. That idea is that every individual bears the image of God. While the Bible doesn't provide a single systematic policy on disability, the biblical idea of Imago Dei introduced to the whole world a different way to think about all people. It's an idea that countered the prevalent tendency across so many cultures to see certain people as being less human, as burdensome, as unworthy of life. And of course, Jesus consistently showed that contrast in how he approached people with compassion to the marginalized, including those who have disabilities. In a Breakpoint commentary from back in 2009, Chuck Colson described this idea of the image of God this way, quote, "Being created in the Imago Dei endows every person with dignity, a dignity not derived from the majority's opinion or a government definition about the quality of their life or their contribution to society. In the absence of this belief, every decision about the allocation of health care, and indeed about any area of life, becomes an occasion for the young and strong to impose their will on the old and weak." End quote. Now, Chuck had incredible personal experience about caring for those with disabilities. In fact, whenever I'm asked what I consider to be Chuck's best work, his best writing, without hesitation, I point to the introduction and the epilogue of Dancing with Max. That's a book that was authored by Chuck's daughter, Emily Colson, about Chuck's grandson, Max. Listen to Chuck here describe how what he believed about the image of God became so personal to him. Quote, "This is a love story. Love is the mark of the Christian," as Francis Schaeffer once wrote, the first Christian virtue, the essence of God himself. Emily and Max have taught me about love in a deeper way than I've ever understood before. I've witnessed love that perseveres. I've marveled at how God has poured his grace through them, guiding them through amazing trials and pain, and then I've witnessed in the end the triumph of love. End quote. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. And for more resources to live like a Christian today, go to breakpoint.org.
Thanks, John. Outside we go. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Brisk and chilly. Cloud cover breaking for some sun. Temperatures holding nearly steady. Tonight will turn out mainly clear and cold, the low in the 20s to near 30. Then for tomorrow and Wednesday, good deal of sunshine and warming up again. The high tomorrow in the 50s to near 60. The high Wednesday in the 60s to near 70. But it will be much cooler both afternoons, close to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Lots going on Monday. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Dozens feared dead after powerful twisters tore a path of destruction from Texas to Pennsylvania over the weekend. Meteorologist Katie Byrne.
This tornado outbreak started on Friday and lasted 3 days. We know it led to 53 total confirmed tornadoes so far.
This Mississippi man describes the scene when a funnel cloud touched down where he lived.
I was holding my wife to my chest and just watching everything disappear and watching everything get ripped down away from me.
Coverage continues with correspondent Jason Allen.
In St. Louis, tornadoes ripped apart homes and businesses and flipped over tractor trailers. Winds up to 80 miles per hour gusted through the South and Midwest, with tornadoes tearing down homes in Louisiana and ripping trees from the ground in Arkansas. Hundreds of thousands are without power across the country.
One twister in Alabama was so powerful it picked up a school bus and dropped it onto the roof of a high school. President Trump will be speaking tomorrow with Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. It is the next step toward a possible ceasefire in the war with Ukraine. Until then, the war rages on. Reporter Keir Simmons has the latest on the fighting from Kursk in western Russia.
Ukrainian forces are in retreat, losing a valuable bargaining chip. Kursk is Russian territory held by Ukraine for 7 months. Ukraine defeated here by a relentless Russian onslaught. Even as Trump promotes peace, Putin visiting Kursk in military fatigues last week, urging his troops on.
Hundreds of suspected migrant gang members arrived over the weekend at a mega prison in El Salvador. They were deported from the U.S. by the Trump administration. Madeline Rivera at Fox News.
261 illegal aliens were deported to El Salvador on Saturday. Of those, 137 were removed via the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. This wartime authority gives the president the power to deport non-citizens without a judicial hearing. The act has only been invoked 3 other times in American history.
Once during the War of 1812 and then again during World Wars I and II. Reporter Jackie Heinrich has more from the White House.
You know, Democrats have made a lot of noise over this, claiming that the White House triggered a constitutional crisis by defying a judge's order. But folks here say that is not what happened at all. The plane was already in the sky over international waters when the judge declared that the president could not invoke the 1789 Alien Enemies Act to deport the alleged gang members without hearing.
Those Tren de Aragua gang members are now at a Supermax facility in El Salvador. Yemen's Houthi rebels have attacked an American aircraft carrier after U.S. strikes over the weekend left dozens dead.
The first wave of attacks happened on Saturday. Then the following
harrowing day. A U.S. fighter jet shot down around a dozen drones launched over the course of several hours. The Houthis then claimed to have fired a ballistic missile that hit the USS Harry S. Truman, which is operating in the area. Officials tell us the missile was aimed at the aircraft carrier, but it fell well short, crashing into the water. Houthi officials say at least 53 people were killed in Yemen as a result of the strike.
CBS's Charlie D'Agata, 3 months into his second term, a new NBC News poll gives President Trump a 47% approval rating. Political analyst Steve Kornacki.
Historically speaking, this is low. However, if you compare it to Donald Trump's first term in 2017, this is actually about as good as Trump has done, a 47% approval rating in our poll. Also, what it suggests is that since the election, he hasn't grown his support, but that coalition that elected him still for right now does seem to be with him.
Kornacki interviewed on the Today Show. Conversely, the same poll gives Democrats an approval rating of just 27%. It is their lowest in the history of this survey. Flags are at half-staff today across New York in honor of former Democratic Congresswoman Nita Lowey.
Nita Lowey served for 32 years in the House representing parts of the Hudson Valley. She died on Saturday after a battle with breast cancer. Governor Kathy Hochul calls her a tireless fighter for the state who never stopped working to deliver for the people of Westchester and Rockland. Lowey was 87 years old.
Scott Pringle reporting it's been a long, strange trip, but the end's in sight for astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. More than 9 months after they arrived aboard the International Space Station, they're due to arrive home tomorrow.
4 fresh astronauts, led by Commander Ann McClain, arrived at the space station early Sunday morning. Among the welcoming party, Wilmore and Williams.
It was a wonderful day. Great to see our friends arrive.
After a short handover, Wilmore and Williams, along with NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, will board a different SpaceX capsule and return to Earth on Tuesday.
CBS's Mark Strassman. Economists predict the U.S. workforce will lose $20 billion in productivity during the upcoming March Madness men's college basketball tournament. That's $20 billion with a B. College hoops fans will spend an average 4 or more hours a day taking in the action over the next 3 weeks. First round action gets underway tomorrow. The tournament concludes with the championship game in San Antonio, April 7th. This is the Noon Report on Family Life, and next up, it's part 2 of our conversation with Mike Blank at Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Blank is talking to Family Life's Greg Gillespie about the NIL controversy in college sports. NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. It allows college athletes to make money, and in some cases, a lot of money. Blank says NIL has forever changed the nature of sports ministry at college. Take a listen.
In the world of sports today, when you look at collegiate sports and especially within the Power Four conferences, right now, the majority of the young men that are on our roster right now are more than likely getting paid something from NIL. A lot of times, the bigger the school, the bigger the pay. You have a lot of athletes that's coming right out of high school that are making, some of them, millions of dollars. But on the average, you have a good amount that are making 6 figures. We're seeing athletes come in to college with different stresses and different pressures because of the money that's involved right now.
How does that change your ministry to college athletes?
You treat them like how you would treat a professional athlete. Number one, you have to make sure that this athlete understands and know that my role is here to simply love you, to encourage you, and to pour into you. I want nothing out of you.
Can you talk about success stories where sharing the gospel and doing that kind of Christian servanthood has made a difference for somebody feeling that stress of the way college sports has become so intense?
I'm blessed to be able, in my role, have interactions with our staff that serve on college campuses all across the country. I had a young man that came in and, he was making a lot of money. People seen him this way, that way. And we came in, he got involved with Bible study. He got involved in all these different things. and really was able to have a firm foundation on top of that. And the biggest thing with FCA, what we're reminding athletes and our coaches, our reminder to them is that your identity is not in your sport. Your identity is in Jesus Christ. And so we've had so many success stories where athletes that maybe they got injured, or I was a starter and now I'm second string. They've gone into some type of depression because their identity was so wrapped up in me being a starting quarterback. We've had so many staff that said, hey, I've come across this kid and he allowed me into his life. And I just had to remind him that God loves you just as you are. And your identity isn't in your sport. Your identity is wrapped up in what Jesus Christ did for you. And so I'm really blessed to be in a position where I get a chance to hear those stories.
That is Mike Blank with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The cold front that brought the tempestuous weather yesterday has passed, and in its wake, the chill is back. But that chill won't be here long. A returned southerly flow, the upper levels of the atmosphere, will turn our air warmer again beginning tomorrow. Look for this afternoon, brisk and chilly. Cloud cover breaking for some sun. Temperatures holding nearly steady. Tonight will turn out mainly clear and cold, the low in the 20s to near 30. Then for tomorrow and Wednesday, good deal of sunshine and warming up again. The high tomorrow in the 50s to near 60. The high Wednesday in the 60s to near 70. But it will be much cooler both afternoons, close to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
All right, 70 sounds A-OK to me. Thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon.
Kramer, he's just a dentist.
Yeah, and you're an anti-dentite.
I am not an anti-dentite.
You're a rabid anti-dentite. Oh, it starts with a few jokes and some slurs. Hey, Denty! Next thing you know, you're saying they should have their own schools.
They do have their own schools.
Yeah, that line never gets old from Seinfeld. Well, there's a new survey out today on what most Americans are saying about their dentist. Turns out they're lying through their teeth about their teeth. This poll conducted by Aspen Dental asked 2,000 Americans about their dental hygiene. Nearly 60% confessed to lying to their dentist because they did not want to disappoint them. 45% admitted they have not visited a dentist in more than a year. Nearly 1 in 5 haven't seen the inside of a dentist's office in over 5 years. And that's our world, the world we live in. Monday, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.